Hi everybody, this is Jessica from My Enneagram Life Coach, and I have not posted a YouTube video in a while. I'm sorry about that, but I'm hoping to do better. And today I was going to do a brief video on type sixes and conspiracy theories. So part of why I'm bringing this up is because, um, you know, you don't have to be a type 6 to be in six space. One of the things about Enneagram is that it's a fluid system. And that means whether or not you are a type 6, you may sometimes find yourself in six space. That especially happens if you have a line to six or a wing of six. So type 7s, type 5, type 3, type 9, and also if it's in your trinotype, which is beyond the scope of this. But let's just say you don't have to be a 6 to get caught up in the whirlwind of conspiracy theories. And that's what I want to touch on today. So, first of all, let's understand what's happening in six space. Sixes are fear types. And that means that the dominant negative emotion that they feel on a regular basis is fear. And that may or may not be conscious to the particular six. And not only are they fear types, but the passion of six or the sin of type six is fear on top of that. So not only are they a fear type, but they wrestle with fear itself on a regular basis, similar to how ones are anger types who also suffer from anger and resentment. So if ones are the maddest of the mad, it's kind of like sixes are the most fearful of the fear types. And what sixes want is certainty. A six subconsciously, but I mean, when they do self-work, they can start realizing this about themselves. Sixes believe that in order to be safe, or in order to make progress in life, or in order to make a decision, or in order to commit to something, you need to be sure. And because of that, they're very responsible people. They tend to do their homework, they tend to look into things, research things. But what happens is they can get into analysis paralysis and just overanalyze and overthink and think. Sixes are the kind of people who stay up at night just thinking, right? It's very difficult for a six stuck in their sixdom to calm their minds, which is why prayer and meditation is super helpful, but that's another story. So when a six is looking for certainty, it is a manifestation of them trying to make themselves feel safe in a world that they don't trust. Or if you want to switch it into a spiritual framework, what we could say is sixes don't trust goodness, or they don't trust God. And so they are trying to make themselves feel safe because faith, of course, or trust it's a leap. You don't know. I mean, in any relationship, you don't know if the other person is going to keep up what you believe is their end of the deal, right? I mean, pretty much, or a job. You don't know if the job is going to be exactly what you want it to be. But sixes tell themselves that they have everything figured out ahead of time. The word they usually use is prepared. And that is a way that they maybe like self-soothe about the anxiety that they fear, or the unknown, right? They have this unknown that they can't stand. They don't want to look into the void of the unknown. And so they sort of tell themselves and believe that they actually can tell the future. And another thing that happens there is sixes are usually high in trait neuroticism. And that means that they tend to be more in touch with their negative emotions than some other types of people. And so when they have a void, when they have an information void about anything, whether it be their own life or their partner's life or politics, something globally, if they don't know information and there's a void, they will automatically, naturally try to fill that void. And it's not just sixes, like I said. I mean, anytime there's a void, right? I mean, the laws of the universe say voids get filled. So what happens is when sixes don't have information about a person or about a job or about, something, a decision they want to make, where they want to live, when they don't have information, they will and they don't know they're really doing this, but they'll sort of make up information, even if it's not true. But they believe that they have enough clues to arrive at the conclusions that they have arrived at. And if you're in relationship with six, a lot of times this is why they seem so suspicious all the time, right? Where were you on Saturday night? Oh, I was at lunch with my mom. No, you weren't, because they're always trying to like catch you in a lie. That's a big thing for sixes, and part of that is because they don't trust goodness, whether it's in partnerships or in the world. So conspiracy theories get born out of a six's when a six feels like they need more information to feel safe, which is also, like I said, it's unconscious. They will fill in the gaps using clues that they believe that they have perceived or picked up along the way or sniffed out, and they will construct a whole story around just a few clues that this is another thing too, right? Sixes are thinking repressed. Even though they're in the thinking center, they are often being more emotional than they are logical when they're not in a good place. So what can happen is their fear starts kicking in and filling in the blanks. So instead of being logical and understanding gaps of information, their fear takes over and starts steering them in a pessimistic and downward spiral. And that's how we get conspiracy theories. Now, also, let's say this: a high functioning six who is very healthy and is correctly using their logical capacities and is able to distinguish the difference between facts and opinions, or emotions and facts, they actually are good at sniffing things out. They are good at figuring things out, problem solving. And now again, some conspiracy theories are true. And so a high functioning six is able to, from time to time, notice a conspiracy theory. You can sometimes tell when a six is really spinning out when everything becomes a conspiracy theory. And even people, podcasters or people who you know of, like who are famous, have this happen a lot. If they're type six, if everything out of their mouth is a conspiracy, they're probably a spiraling six. And what's funny about that is, sixes tend to be pessimistic because their fear takes over. One of the things that we say for sixes to do for self-work is, instead of imagining the worst case, try to imagine the best case, because it's literally your imagination either way. So if you have to imagine something and make up reality, why not make up a positive reality instead of a negative one? Usually they'll say, well, then I won't be disappointed. That's usually what they say. Well, I'll expect the best, and I'll expect the worst, and if something better happens, well, then I won't be let down. Okay, maybe. But what that makes for is kind of a real, maybe grumpy or sad or bummed out or anxiety-ridden person. So at their healthy levels, sixes can logically think through things. Everything doesn't have to be a conspiracy theory. And another thing that happens quite often with sixes is, one of the things that is in a lot of the literature about sixes is when they get so caught up in their anxieties, they tend to neglect the details of their own life. So in other words, especially if this happens like in a political way, if they are really like, or something that's like out of their hands, right? Like watching things on a global scale a lot of times is something that you can pray about and you can vote and you can volunteer. But beyond that, as individuals, our hands are kind of tied with big global events. But a six who is in a not healthy space might spend all of her time wrapped up in politics rather than dealing with her own life, her own bills, her own job, her own relationships, right? Like, or you kind of think of like the dude who's like, 40 years old, living in his mom's basement and has a conspiracy theory about everything, but isn't in a relationship, is maybe overweight, doesn't have a job, can't pay his own bills. It's like, sometimes the conspiracies are a distraction that keep them from being responsible for their own lives. And another thing is, and this happens sometimes with me when I teach Enneagram, because some people, because of religious ideologies, I will say, are very resistant to Enneagram, and they feel like it might be Satan worship. I mean, that's Believe it or not, that's true. It is not Satan worship, and I am not a Satan worshiper. I am a Christ follower. However, there are people, oftentimes sixes, who get very, very, very concerned that Enneagram is somehow demonic. Or, they look at the Enneagram symbol and then they think, oh my gosh, it looks like a pentagram. Enneagram means nine-pointed, a shape with 9 points. Pentagram, 5 points. Oh my gosh, it's Satan worship. Do you see how that's fear-based? Like, get to the substance of what the material is. Don't just look at a design pattern and decide something is satanic, right? That's a really elementary way of assessing the world. And you can see how fear is behind that, not logic. But oftentimes I will get feedback from sixes who are really, really scared that I am somehow a witch or somehow doing something, outside of the bounds of Christianity, when really this is just personality science. So again, a healthy six is actually able to see when things are logically out of line or to see when there is logically a reason to be concerned. But a six whose whole world is conspiracy theories, especially a six whose own life is not in good order, their money, their relationships, where they live, their job, that's a red flag for sixes, to take the attention off of all the things in the world that could go wrong and all the conspiracies and all the rabbit holes and bring it back to what is a good action, not thoughts, action. Get in your body and take an action towards something that will make your life on your side of the street, in your little world, and the kingdom of you better today for you and for everyone else. Thanks for watching. Oh, like and follow.